Hi everyone, it's Monica and welcome back to Taylor-Made Cards for You. Today I'm sharing with you one of my latest releases called Roses and Rust. And this release is perfect for Halloween. This month the design team and myself are working on some of our holiday cards, and each design member got to pick a specific holiday. Halloween is always one of my favorite holidays to create for. So I definitely chose Halloween, and I had to create a new kit to go along with my design. Now, when I decided to create another Halloween kit, I wanted it to be something that I can use not only for Halloween, but that I can use for other occasions as well. But I wanted to have a little bit of a macabre feel. So I decided to use some of the colors that were great for Halloween. I chose some of my purples, some of my blacks, and I did choose some images that looked just a little bit, well, eerie, I guess. And I intentionally designed this kit to work with a couple of my Stampers Anonymous sets. So the two stamp sets that I'm working with today are called Rest in Peace and Dearly Departed. And the Dearly Departed stamp set is kind of like a funeral home feel, which has some labels. It has a casket and coffin label, which is the one that I'm using currently. And it has like a wholesale florist label as well. And those were the two stamps that I decided to use for my card. I wanted the card to have kind of an eerie feel without it being too gruesome, because I wanted to be able to emphasize the flowers and this little girl. So after I stamped the casket and coffins stamp onto my cardstock, then I went ahead and I took the wholesale florist stamp and I stamped that directly onto some cardstock of mine. Now this cardstock was a little bit thicker and it was perfect to hold a label. So I went ahead and I added the stamp onto my acrylic block, and then I'm going to use some gray archival ink to add to my stamp. I thought the archival ink was subtle enough to complement the paper without it being too bold. So I went ahead, since I had my stamp out, and I decided to stamp a couple of labels so that way I can use them on other cards. And then once I had them stamped, I cut them out and I added some distress ink to the edges. One of the things that I love about this kit is that it makes some very easy cards, and the paper is just so beautiful. It's got some wonderful designs, and you can really just, by adding a few embellishments, have several completed cards in no time at all. So once I had the labels cut out, like I said, I went ahead and I added some distress ink, and then I punched a little hole onto the label so that way I could attach it to the cardstock. I wanted it to kind of look like a little card or a label that a florist would add, and that's why I decided to use some twine to just simply add it as a loose tag. So as you can see, just with a couple of stamps, I was able to finish a card in no time at all. Now, if you don't have these stamps by Stampers Anonymous, you can easily pull out some of your ephemera to be able to add a label. The kit also has some smaller pieces that you can also add to create your own types of labels. So don't fret if you don't have these particular Stampers Anonymous stamps. There are other options within the kit to make some wonderful cards. Okay, so let's go ahead and, like I said, stamp the hole into this label, and then we will add it to the cardstock using our twine. And then once I had the label attached, I decided I didn't want it to be loose, so I decided to add a little bit of foam tape to the back of the label just to kind of hold it in place. And that, for the most part, finishes our first card. Now this second card is going to be very easy, and as you can see, the background it has some beautiful colors. It's kind of a faded color, just to look a little bit old and distressed, but it's faded enough that it will hold this condemned stamp perfectly. So I'm going to go ahead and use my Misti, so that way if I have to stamp it a couple of times, I'll stamp it in exactly the same place. And I'm using black archival ink, again adding as much ink as I need to get a nice crisp image. And as you can see, this stamp is just wonderful on this paper. Even though the paper is a little bit busy, you can still see the sentiment of the condemned very nicely through the paper. And then once I have my condemned stamp finished, I'm going to go ahead and add just another embellishment, and this is poison. And again, I'm stamping it underneath where it is a little bit faded, so that way the image will show up nicely. So it really didn't take much to this piece of cardstock to get a completed card. Now this stamp set is called Rest in Peace, and it has some really great images. But rather than using one of the images, I decided to use one of my paper dolls. And I want to say this particular paper doll is from the Halloween set, but I don't remember specifically. But I thought she worked perfectly for this card. So I'm going to go ahead and pop her up using some foam tape and add her directly over the condemned sentiment. Okay, so once I have my paper doll, then I'm going to go ahead and add another stamp from the same stamp set. And this again is the Rest in Peace stamp set. And I'm going to add a little poison stamp. And this poison stamp is great because it's small enough where it can add just enough interest, but it doesn't really take over the background. And then I'm going to pull one of my stickers out from my Tim Holtz Chit Chat stickers. And I'm going to go ahead and distress the sides and add it directly to my card. And then that, for the most part, will complete my second card. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to our third card. Now, the third card is one of my favorites because I love the big skeleton face on the Rest in Peace stamp set. I used this stamp last year and I made some wonderful tags, and this year I decided to use it on some cards. So I wanted to make sure that my skeleton image would show up nicely, so I wanted to pick some background paper that wasn't too busy. And this striped paper was perfect. It has the gray background, which still gives it a little bit of an eerie feel. As you can see, it also has some lace, so it's perfect for Halloween. So I went ahead and I took my skeleton stamp and I'm going to ink it up. And again, I'm using my Misti because I want to make sure I get some nice crisp images. This really is a wonderful stamp and I just love it. The detail on this stamp is perfect. And if you love making Halloween cards, you're going to love this stamp. Now, as you can see, I had to make a couple of passes with my ink and my Misti to make sure I got a nice crisp image, but it came out perfectly, so I was really happy with the overall result. And then once I finished stamping the skeleton, I wanted to go ahead and add another smaller stamp. And that's what I really love about the Rest in Peace set. It has several smaller stamps that are great stamps to accompany the larger image. So for this particular one, I used the identification number 1013 to just fit right on the side, and it fits in nicely. All right, so once I had my number stamp to the left, I went ahead and I removed my background paper from my Misti. And as you can see, I am using the sticky grid, so I don't have to use any magnets. But I went ahead and I removed it from my Misti, and then I pulled out another stamp, and this one again is from the Dearly Departed. So as you can see, these two stamp sets really interchange nicely. So if you like making Halloween cards, you can just pull out both of these stamp sets, and both stamps on either set will work nicely to accompany each other. So for this particular one, I'm pulling out the script stamp, and I'm just using some of my archival ink, and I didn't even have to put the stamp on an acrylic block. I'm just simply holding it and adding some of the script to the edge around the skeleton. This is one of my favorite techniques because I think it adds such great interest. You can get over any oversized stamp set and just simply hold it and just pick parts of the stamp to add to your background. It doesn't have to be very crisp, and in fact, it even looks better when it's a little bit light because you want it as a background and you don't necessarily want it to be too bold. So I'm just kind of adding some ink to the stamp and moving it around the skeleton just to have some background image. And I think it came out perfect. All right, so once I'm finished with my stamping, then I'm going to go ahead and pull out some of my remnant rubs. Now, if you're not familiar with Tim Holtz's remnant rubs, these are fun embellishments. He has them for several of his designs, and he also has them just for Halloween. And those are the ones that I'm going to be pulling out to add to my card base. Now, in many cases, the remnant rubs that are from the Tim Holtz collection are just smaller versions of some of his stamps. So as you see some of the remnant rubs that I'm going to be using, you might recognize some of the stamps that I've already used. But what I love about the remnant rubs is, number one, they're black, so they look really great on backgrounds because they're bold and they stand out. And number two, they're small. So you can add several of these remnant rubs and they make great additions to your cards. So as you can see, these remnant rubs have gotten a lot of love. I just typically will keep them in a little box and snip off what I want to use. So I'm just kind of perusing through some of the Halloween remnant rubs, and I'm adding them to the cardstock. Now you can even see on the left hand side of my screen, I have a skeleton on one of the remnant rubs, and that's the exact skeleton of the big stamp that I used. So as you can see, Tim sometimes takes several of his stamps and turns them into the remnant rubs, so that way you have not only the larger stamp, but you have the smaller accompanying remnant rubs to go with your designs. I just think it's a fantastic idea, and I love how these stamps coordinate with the smaller embellishments. So as I finish up these 3 cards, I want to remind you to check out the links below, where I'll have links to all of the design team member videos. Each design team member is going to be using a fun kit for a specific holiday that they chose. You're going to see designs for Christmas, some more Halloween. You're going to even see 4th of July, so you're not going to want to miss those videos. I also want to remind you to check the description box below, where I'll have links to all of the products that I've used to create these cards. And I'll also have a special coupon code for you to use in the shop. Now, as a special bonus, I decided that I'm going to go ahead and give away this kit in a drawing to one of the lucky commenters. So be sure to leave a comment below and let me know what your favorite holiday is to create for. Like I said, my favorite is Halloween, but I know that there's all sorts of different types of holidays out there that we create for, and I'd love to hear what your favorite holiday is. I'll have a drawing in a couple of weeks where I pick one of the commenters to win this specific kit. Now, if you're not a Halloween fan, then I'll certainly give you an option to get a different holiday kit in the shop. Finally, I wanted to remind you that this month I am celebrating Christmas in July, where I'll be doing live videos each Sunday afternoon over on my YouTube channel. So hopefully you'll be able to join in and get some Christmas inspiration as well. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for stopping by, and we'll see you again next time.